The cargo ship Lucky Strike came out of hyperspace like a wounded animal. Smoke poured from its engines, and sparks flew from damaged panels along its hull. Captain Jake Morrison fought with the controls as his ship limped toward Kepler Station, the massive trading hub that floated in the darkness between star systems. "Kepler Control, this is Lucky Strike requesting immediate docking," Jake said into his radio. His voice was tired and rough. "I have priority news about the Verdania system." The reply came back quickly. "Lucky Strike, you are cleared for emergency. Base 7, medical teams are standing by." Jake shook his head. "No medical teams needed. But get Commander Torres. She needs to hear this right away." 20 minutes later, Jake sat in the station commander's office. Lisa Torres poured him a cup of coffee and waited. She had known Jake for 5 years. He was a good captain and an honest trader. If he said something was urgent, it probably was. "The Zephyrians attacked Verdania 3 days ago," Jake said without waiting for questions. "The whole planet is under siege." Lisa almost dropped her coffee cup. "That's impossible. The Zephyrian Empire and the Helix Confederation both signed the Verdania Accord. That planet is neutral territory." "Tell that to the Zephyrian battle fleet sitting in orbit around it," Jake replied. "I was making a supply run to the mining stations near there when my sensors picked up the attack. 47 Zephyrian warships. They took out the planetary defense grid in the first hour." Lisa sat down heavily in her chair. Verdania was home to over 2 million people from dozens of different species. It was supposed to be safe. Both sides of the war had agreed that some places were too unimportant to fight over. "What about the automated defense systems?" she asked. "Those ancient machines have protected that planet for 1,000 years. Jake's face was grim. "Gone. All of them. Someone shut them down from the inside. The Zephyrians walked right through. Defenses that should have stopped a fleet 10 times that size." Lisa activated her communication console. "All senior staff to the main conference room. Emergency session. Now." Within an hour, the conference room was packed. Representatives from the Galactic Mediation Corps sat next to independent traders and station security officers. Everyone knew something big was happening. Amy Chun spoke for the Mediation Corps. She was a small woman with sharp eyes who had spent 20 years trying to keep the peace between warring species. "We have confirmed Captain Morrison's report," she said. "Verdania is under attack." The planetary government sent out a distress call before their communications were cut. A Calixian trader named Vex clicked his mandibles together nervously. "What about the civilians? Are they evacuating?" "The Zephyrian fleet has established a complete blockade," Amy replied. "No ships in or out. Everyone on that planet is trapped." The room erupted in angry voices. Representatives from a dozen species all talked at once, demanding action. Lisa raised her hand for silence. "What are our options?" she asked. Amy Chun looked around the room. "Officially? None. Both the Zephyrian Empire and the Helix Confederation have agreed that this is a military matter between them. Any outside interference would be considered an act of war. So we just let them die?" The voice belonged to Ryan Mitchell, a human trader who ran supplies to the outer colonies. His face was red with anger. "It's not that simple," Amy said. "If we intervene, it could start a galactic war. The math is clear. Sometimes difficult choices have to be made for the greater." "Good." Ryan stood up so fast his chair fell over. "Math? These are people we're talking about. Families, children." Most of the other species in the room looked uncomfortable but resigned. This was how galactic politics worked. You couldn't save everyone. Sometimes the needs of the many outweighed the needs of the few. But the humans in the room looked different. Besides Ryan, there was Carol Adams, who ran a medical supply company, and Nick Parker, who captained the exploration vessel. All three of them looked angry in a way that made the other species nervous. "The Council will vote," Lisa announced. "All in favor of maintaining neutrality?" Almost every hand went up. Only the three humans voted against. "Motion carries," Lisa sighed. "Kepler Station will remain neutral in this matter." As the meeting broke up, the non-human representatives filed out quietly. Some looked sad, others relieved. War was terrible, but it was better than getting involved in something that could destroy everything. The humans stayed behind. Ryan Mitchell pulled out a small communication device and started typing a message. Carol and Nick moved closer to him. "What are you doing?" Lisa asked. "Sending word back to Earth," Ryan said without looking up from his device. "People need to know what's happening out here. Ryan, Earth is weeks away by hyperspace. Even if they wanted to help, they couldn't get here in time." Ryan finished his message and looked up at her. "Maybe, but someone should know that we had a chance to help and chose to do nothing." He activated the device. Somewhere in the depths of space, encrypted signals began racing toward the Sol system. Toward Earth. Toward people who might not understand. The careful mathematics of galactic politics. Lisa watched the three humans leave her office. There was something in their faces that worried her. Other species had learned to accept that some things couldn't be changed. Humans, she was beginning to realize, had never learned that lesson. In the days that followed, more humans began arriving at Kepler Station. They came in cargo ships and exploration vessels, independent traders and survey crews. Each arrival seemed normal by itself, but together they formed a pattern that made Lisa nervous. Something was building. Something the galaxy wasn't prepared for. Dr. Kate Sullivan crouched behind a pile of rubble that used to be the Verdania University Library. Smoke filled the air, and the sound of explosions echoed across the capital city of New Haven. 3 days ago, she had been studying the planet's unique plant life. Now she was trying to stay alive. "Professor, we need to move," said Danny Kim, one of her graduate students. His face was covered in dust, and his research clothes were torn. "The Zephyrian ground troops are getting closer." Kate looked around at her team. Besides Danny, it was Maria Santos from the botany department and Dr. Frank Davis, who studied alien languages. None of them were soldiers. They were scientists who had come here to learn about new forms of life. Instead, they were watching a world die. "The subway tunnels," Kate said. "If we can reach the old transit system, we might be able to get to the civilian shelters." They ran through the empty streets, dodging pieces of falling buildings. Above them, Zephyrian fighters screamed through the sky, hunting for targets. The automated defense systems that had protected this planet for centuries were nothing but twisted metal now. The subway entrance was blocked by debris, but Kate found her team's emergency toolkit in her backpack. She pulled out a small plasma cutter that was designed for taking plant samples. "This might work," she said. 20 minutes later, they had cut through enough metal to squeeze into the tunnels. The underground was dark and filled with frightened voices. Hundreds of people from dozens of species huddled in the darkness, waiting for help that might never come. A tall figure approached them. He looked like the native Verdanians, with blue-gray skin and large eyes that could see in the dark. "I am Thane Corlix," he said. "I lead the resistance in this sector. You are the human scientists from the university?" Kate nodded. "We're trying to reach the main civilian shelters." "Those shelters are gone," Thane said quietly. "Zephyrian bombs collapsed the tunnels yesterday. We're setting up new safe areas, but we need better communication with other resistance groups. Our equipment was destroyed in the first attack." Kate looked at her team's scientific gear. Most of it was designed for field research, but some of the communication arrays might be useful. "We might be able to help with that," she said. For the next 6 hours, Kate and her students worked with Thane's people to rebuild the communication network. The human equipment wasn't designed for military use, but Kate had spent years figuring out how to make things work in impossible conditions. Where other species saw broken machinery, she saw spare parts that could be combined in new ways. "How do you know how to do this?" asked Zara, a young Verdanian who was helping Kate rewire. "A communication panel. On Earth, we fix things instead of throwing them away," Kate said as she connected 2 pieces of equipment that were never meant to work together. Sometimes you have to break the rules to make something work. By evening, they had established contact with 12 other resistance groups across the city. Thane's people shared food and medical supplies with the human scientists. Despite the war raging above them, there was a sense of hope in the tunnel's dot. Meanwhile, thousands of light years away, Ryan Mitchell's message was traveling through space. Toward Earth, the signal passed through relay stations and communication networks, jumping from system to system until it reached the Sol system. Admiral Ben Carter was in his office at Earth Defense Command when the message arrived. He was a big man with gray hair and tired eyes who had spent 30 years preparing for a war that might never come. Earth had been building ships and training soldiers for decades, but they had stayed in their own system and minded their own business. He read Ryan's message 3 times. Verdania falling. Civilians trapped. Galaxy watching. Need help. Carter activated his secure communication system and called a meeting of the Earth Defense Council. Within 2 hours, representatives from every major Earth government were connected by quantum communication. "The situation is clear," Carter said to the assembled leaders. "A neutral world is under attack. Millions of civilians are trapped. The galactic community has decided not to intervene." President Sarah Williams of the North American Federation spoke first. "What are our legal obligations here?" "None," replied General Alex Thompson from the European Defense Alliance. "Earth is not a signatory to any galactic treaties regarding this conflict. But we have a moral obligation," said Prime Minister David Chun from the Pacific Union. "These are innocent people." The debate went on for hours. Some leaders worried about starting a war Earth couldn't win. Others argued that Earth couldn't ignore suffering when they had the power to help. Finally, Admiral Carter spoke. "We've been preparing for this day for 20 years. Not this exact situation, but the day when Earth would have to decide what kind of species we want to be in the galaxy." He activated a holographic display showing the current positions of Earth's fleets, ships that the galactic community didn't know existed, technology that was decades ahead of what other species believed. Earth possessed. "Fleet 7 is already positioned at the edge of known space," Carter continued. "They can reach Verdania in 4 days. The question is, do we reveal ourselves now, or do we wait for a situation that might never come?" President Williams looked around at her fellow leaders. All in favor of military intervention? The vote was unanimous. Carter nodded and activated the fleet communication system. "Admiral Carter to Fleet 7. Operation Guardian Angel is authorized. Proceed to Verdania. System with full military readiness." Deep in space, 27 warships received their orders and began moving toward a battle that would change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. Back on Verdania, Kate Sullivan worked through the night to keep the communication network running. She had no idea that help was coming. She only knew that people needed to be saved, and someone had to try. The bombing started again at sunrise. Kate Sullivan felt the ground shake as Zephyrian ships dropped explosive charges on the city above their underground shelter. Dust fell from the tunnel ceiling and emergency lights flickered. "They're targeting the hospital district now," said Thane Corlix, reading reports on the communication system Kate had helped build. His voice was calm, but his large eyes showed the strain of leading a resistance that was slowly losing ground. Kate looked at the map display. Her team had rigged up using parts from their scientific equipment. Red dots showed Zephyrian positions. They were everywhere now, closing in on the remaining civilian areas like a slow-moving trap. "How many people are still in the hospital?" she asked. "About 800, replied Maria Santos. Kate's graduate student had become the unofficial coordinator for refugee movements. Doctors, patients, and families who refused to leave the wounded behind. Kate studied the map. The hospital was only 6 blocks away, but those 6 blocks were crawling with enemy soldiers. "We need to get them out," she said. Dr. Frank Davis shook his head. "Kate, we're scientists, not soldiers. We can't fight our way through Zephyrian troops." "Then we don't fight," Kate said. "We think." She pulled up the city's utility maps on their makeshift computer system. "Look at this. There's a maintenance tunnel that runs directly under the hospital. It connects to the old geothermal power plant. If we can reach the plant, we can access the tunnel without going through the streets." Vane studied the map. "That tunnel has been sealed for 50 years. The entrance is blocked by tons of concrete." Kate smiled for the first time in days. "Good thing we brought the right tools for the job." Far above them, in the vacuum of space around Kepler Station, another human ship was requesting docking permission. The cargo vessel Iron Wolf looked like any other independent trader, but Station Commander Lisa Torres had learned to pay attention when humans showed up. Captain Chris Reynolds met with the docking inspector and provided all the proper paperwork. His cargo manifest listed agricultural equipment bound for the Rigel colonies. Everything looked normal, but the inspector's scanner detected unusual energy readings from the cargo hold. "What kind of agricultural equipment needs military grade?" "Power cells?" asked the inspector. Chris smiled and handed over another set of documents. "Terraforming equipment. Heavy-duty atmospheric processors. They need a lot of power to change the air on dead worlds." The papers were perfect. The clearances were all valid. The inspector had no legal reason to hold the ship, even though his instincts told him something was wrong. Lisa Torres watched from her office as the Iron Wolf docked. It was the 7th human ship to arrive in the past 2 days. Each one had proper documentation and legitimate business, but together they formed a pattern that made her nervous. Her security chief, Alex Parker, came into her office carrying a datapad. "Commander, we need to talk," he said. Alex activated a holographic display showing ship positions around the station. 15 human vessels have arrived since the Verdania crisis began. That's more human traffic than we normally see in 6 months. Lisa studied the display. The ships were positioned at different docking bays around the station, but if you connected them with lines, they formed a perfect defensive perimeter. "You think they're planning something?" "I think they're organizing," Alex replied. "And I think we're seeing just the beginning." In the cargo bay of the Iron Wolf, Chris Reynolds opened a sealed container labeled as irrigation pumps. Inside were compact energy weapons that could level a building. Another container marked as soil analyzers contained military communication, equipment that was more advanced than anything the station's security forces carried. He activated a small device and sent a coded message to the other human ships docked at the station. The message was simple: package delivered. Waiting for word from home. Back on Earth, Admiral Ben Carter stood in the war room deep beneath the surface of the moon. Around him, holographic displays showed the positions of Earth's secret fleets, ships that had been built in hidden shipyards, using technology the rest of the galaxy didn't know existed. "Fleet 7 is 18 hours out from Verdania," reported Captain Susan White, Carter's operations officer. "All ships are at full combat readiness." Carter nodded and activated the secure communication link to Earth's government leaders. The fleet is almost in position. Once we emerge from hyperspace, there's no going back. The entire galaxy will know that Earth has been hiding our true capabilities. President Sarah Williams appeared on the screen from her office in Washington. Admiral, have you considered the possibility that we might be starting a war we can't finish? Ma'am, with respect, we've been preparing for that war for 20 years, Carter replied. The question isn't whether we can win. The question is whether we can live with ourselves if we do nothing. The president was quiet for a moment. In the background, Carter could hear other world leaders arguing in different languages. Finally, she spoke. The decision stands. Proceed with the mission. Meanwhile, in the command center of the Zephyrian fleet orbiting Verdania, Admiral Keth Zorvak received an interesting intelligence report. His communication officer had intercepted a transmission from the human trading station at Kepler. Sir, it appears that Earth has been monitoring this situation, the officer reported. Their message suggests they are considering intervention. Admiral Zorvak laughed. It was a harsh sound that echoed through the bridge. Earth, the primitive world. That barely has colonies outside their own star system. What could they possibly do? Across the battle zone, Helix Confederation Fleet Commander Yara Thess received the same intelligence. Her reaction was similar. Earth was known throughout the galaxy as a minor power with outdated technology and limited resources. They had a few exploration ships and some cargo vessels, but nothing that could challenge a real military force. Both commanders filed the reports and forgot about them. They had more important things to worry about than threats from a species that hadn't fought a real war in generations. They were about to learn that sometimes the biggest mistakes come from underestimating someone who has been very quiet for a very long time. On Verdania, Kate Sullivan and her team prepared to rescue 800 people from a hospital surrounded by enemy forces. They had no idea that help was coming. All they knew was that people needed to be saved, and someone had to try. Above them, the war continued. Below them, humans did what humans do best. They refused to accept that some problems couldn't be solved. Chief Sensor Operator Megan Foster had been watching space for 12 years. She knew the difference between cargo ships and warships, between single vessels and fleets. She had seen every type of spacecraft that traveled through this part of the galaxy. She had never seen anything like what was showing up on her screens now. Commander Torres to the sensor station immediately, Megan said into her communication device. Her voice was steady, but her hands were shaking as she adjusted the long-range detection equipment. Lisa Torres arrived in the sensor control room 2 minutes later. What do you have, Megan? Hyperspace distortions at the edge of the system. Megan replied, big ones, multiple contacts. They're coming out of jump space in formation. Lisa looked at the readings on the main display. The numbers didn't make sense. How many ships? 27 confirmed contacts, possibly more. And Commander ... Megan paused, checking her instruments again. These aren't cargo ships or exploration vessels. These are warships. Big ones. The first ship emerged from hyperspace like a metal mountain. It was longer than 3 city blocks and bristled with weapon systems that glowed with barely contained energy. Behind it came smaller ships, but even the smallest was larger than most of the vessels currently in the Verdania system. On the bridge of the lead ship, Admiral Ben Carter watched as his fleet took position in normal space. A dreadnought UES. Defiance was the most powerful warship humanity had ever built, and it was leading 26 other vessels that represented 20 years of secret preparation. All ships report ready, sir, said Captain Susan White. Fleet formation is complete. Carter nodded and activated the general communication system. His voice would be heard by every ship in the system, from the smallest cargo vessel to the largest battlecruiser. This is Admiral Ben Carter of the Earth Defense Fleet to all vessels in the Verdania system. We are here to ensure the safe evacuation of all civilians from the planet's surface. Any interference with humanitarian operations will be met with appropriate force. The reaction was immediate. On Kepler Station, Lisa Torres stared at her communication board as reports flooded in from ships throughout the system. Nobody had expected this. Earth wasn't supposed to have ships like these in the Zephyrian fleet. Admiral Keth Zorvak called an emergency meeting of his senior officers. Where did these ships come from? He demanded. Our intelligence reports say Earth has no significant military capability. His tactical officer studied the sensor readings. Sir, these vessels are using technology we don't recognize. Their power signatures are unlike anything in our databases. Admiral Zorvak felt a cold anger building in his chest. Earth was a minor, power that was supposed to stay in its own system and mind its own business. Now they were interfering in a conflict between major galactic powers. Signal the human fleet, he ordered. Tell them to withdraw immediately or face the consequences. The Helix Confederation fleet had a similar reaction. Fleet Commander Yara Thess couldn't believe what her sensors were telling her. Earth was supposed to be decades behind the major powers in ship technology. The vessels on her screen looked more advanced than anything her own fleet carried. How is this possible? She asked her science officer. Unknown, sir. These ships appear to use some form of advanced hyperspace technology. Their jump signatures suggest they can enter and exit hyperspace much more quickly than our vessels. Both enemy fleets began moving toward the Earth ships. Admiral Zorvak sent a final warning to Admiral Carter. Human fleet, you are interfering in a legitimate military operation. Withdraw now, or we will consider your presence an act of war. Carter's response was broadcast on all channels. Our fleet will proceed to Verdania. You are welcome to try to stop us. On Verdania, Kate Sullivan was crawling through a maintenance tunnel beneath the besieged hospital when the first reports of the Earth fleet reached the resistance fighters. The news spread through the underground shelters like wildfire. Human ships? Thane Corlix couldn't believe what he was hearing over the communication system. How many? The reports say nearly 30 warships, replied one of his scouts. They're demanding that all civilians be allowed to evacuate. Kate stopped crawling and activated her own communication device. This is Dr. Kate Sullivan to any Earth ships in the system. We have civilians trapped in multiple locations throughout the city. The main hospital has 800 people who cannot be moved without assistance. Carter's voice came back immediately. Dr. Sullivan, this is Admiral Carter. We are tracking your location. Evacuation ships are being prepared. Hold your position and keep those people safe. Above the planet, the confrontation was building toward a breaking point. The Zephyrian fleet moved to intercept the Earth ships, while the Confederation fleet positioned itself to prevent any human vessels from reaching the planet. Admiral Zorvak had 47 ships under his command. Fleet Commander Thess had 31. Between them, they had enough firepower to destroy the Earth fleet twice over, assuming the human ships used conventional technology. They were about to discover that human ships didn't use conventional technology. Sir, the human ships are moving, reported the Zephyrian tactical officer. They're heading directly for Verdania. Admiral Zorvak smiled grimly. All ships, attack formation. Target the lead vessel. Fire on my command. The massive Zephyrian battlecruiser Sword of Dominion aimed its main guns at the UES Defiance. 46. Other ships did the same. At this range, there was no way the human ship could survive the concentrated firepower of the entire fleet. Fire. Zorvak commanded dot energy beams and missile volleys streaked across space toward the Earth fleet. The weapons were perfectly aimed and timed. They should have destroyed the lead human ship and badly damaged several others. Instead, the human Ships simply disappeared. One moment they were there, sitting in normal space like easy targets. The next moment they were gone, leaving empty space where the enemy weapons passed harmlessly through. Where did they go? Zorvik shouted. His sensor officer was frantically checking his instruments. Unknown, sir. They appear to have jumped, too. Hyperspace, but the energy readings don't match any known jump technology. Sir? Called another officer. New contacts behind us. The Earth ships had reappeared in the middle of the Zephyrian formation. They had somehow jumped through hyperspace in seconds, instead of the hours that conventional technology required. Now they were inside the enemy fleet, surrounded but holding all the tactical advantages. Admiral Carter's voice cut through the confusion. This is your final warning. Stand down your weapons and allow humanitarian operations to proceed. Admiral Zorvik looked around at the human ships that had appeared among his fleet like ghosts. His weapons were designed for long range combat, not close quarters fighting. If the humans opened fire now, they could destroy half his fleet before he could respond effectively. But backing down from a minor power like Earth would be a humiliation he couldn't accept. All ships, emergency dispersal pattern, he ordered. Get some distance, and then engage with everything we have. The battle for Verdania was about to begin, and it would be unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The battle lasted exactly 17 minutes. Admiral Keth Zorvak had commanded fleets for 20 years. He had fought in 3 major wars and won every engagement. He understood space combat better than almost anyone in the Zephyrian Empire. But he had never seen anything like what the human ships were doing. The Earth vessels moved through space like they were dancing. They appeared behind his ships, fired precisely targeted shots, then vanished back into hyperspace before his weapons could lock onto them. Each attack disabled engines or destroyed weapon systems, but never touched life support or crew quarters. They're not trying to kill us, his tactical officer said in amazement. They're just taking away our ability to fight. Zorvik watched as another of his battlecruisers went dark, its engines destroyed by a single shot from a human ship that had appeared for less than 10 seconds. Impossible. No one can jump in and out of hyperspace that quickly. On the bridge of the UES Defiance, Admiral Ben Carter monitored the battle with calm efficiency. His ships used technology that Earth had developed in secret for 20 years. While the galaxy had focused on building bigger weapons and stronger shields, humans had focused on mobility and precision. Target their command ship, Carter ordered. Disable engines and weapons, but leave life support intact. Captain Susan White nodded and relayed the order. The Defiance materialized directly above the Zephyrian flagship Sword of Dominion. A single energy beam lanced down, cutting through the ship's engine section like a surgical knife. The massive vessel went dead in space, unable to move or fight. Admiral Zorvak stared at his dead control panels. Every system except life support and communications had been destroyed. Around him, his fleet was suffering the same fate. Ships that had been built to fight major galactic wars were being picked apart by human vessels that seemed to ignore the basic laws of physics. Signal all ships, he said quietly. Ceasefire and stand down. The Helix Confederation fleet tried to fare better, but Fleet Commander Yara Thess quickly realized she was facing the same impossible situation. Human ships appeared everywhere at once, striking with pinpoint accuracy and vanishing before her forces could respond. "How many ships do they have?" she asked her sensor officer. "Still reading 27, sir. But they're moving so fast, it seems like there are hundreds of them." Thess made the same decision as her enemy. Within minutes, both fleets had surrendered. Their ships disabled, but their crews unharmed. On Verdania, Kate Sullivan felt the ground shake as human dropships began landing in the city. She crawled out of the maintenance tunnel, to see soldiers in strange armor moving through the streets with impossible speed and coordination. Lieutenant Matt Rodriguez found her group at the hospital entrance. "Dr. Sullivan, I'm here to coordinate the evacuation." Kate looked at the young soldier in amazement. His equipment was unlike anything she had seen before. His armor seemed to move with him like a second skin, and his weapons looked decades ahead of galactic standard. "How many people can you evacuate?" she asked. "All of them," Matt replied simply. "Every civilian on this planet. We have transport. Ships standing by." The evacuation proceeded with efficiency that amazed everyone involved. Human ships landed in impossible places, their crews working with equipment that seemed to ignore basic limitations. What should have taken weeks was completed in hours. Corman Ashley Webb worked alongside Kate to treat wounded civilians. Her medical equipment could heal injuries that would have required major surgery using conventional technology. "How is this possible?" Kate asked as she watched Ashley seal a deep wound with a device the size of her hand. "We've been preparing for this day for a long time," Ashley said. "Earth hasn't been sitting quietly in the Sol system. We've been building and learning and getting ready." As the last refugee ship cleared Verdania's atmosphere, Admiral Carter broadcast a message that would be remembered throughout galactic history. "Earth hereby claims Verdania under right of humanitarian intervention. This planet will serve as a neutral refuge world under human protection. Any nation wishing to dispute this claim is welcome to discuss terms." On Kepler Station, Lisa Torres watched the impossible unfold on her displays. The human fleet had defeated 2 major galactic powers without destroying a single enemy ship. The evacuation of an entire planet had been completed in less than a day. Everything she thought she knew about the balance of power in the galaxy had just changed. "Commander," said Alex Parker, her security chief, "we're receiving requests from 17 different governments. They all want to establish diplomatic relations with Earth." Lisa almost laughed. Yesterday, Earth had been considered a minor power that barely mattered. Today, every major government in the galaxy wanted to be their friend. Ryan Mitchell found her in her office an hour later. The human trader who had started all of this looked tired but satisfied. "I suppose you're going to tell me this was all planned?" Lisa asked. Ryan shook his head. "Not planned. But we were ready. Humans don't like watching people suffer when we can do something about it. And you just happen to have a fleet of advanced warships ready to go?" "We've been building ships for 20 years, Ryan said. "The galaxy assumed we were weak because we stayed in our own system. The truth is, we were studying, learning, preparing for the day when we might need to act." Lisa looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, Earth's fleet was setting up orbital platforms around Verdania. Human engineers were already working to rebuild the planet's cities. A world that had been written off as lost was becoming a symbol of hope. "What happens now?" she asked. Ryan smiled. "Now the galaxy learns that humans don't follow the same rules as everyone else. We don't accept that some people can't be saved. We don't believe that the needs of the few don't matter." 3 months later, Kate Sullivan stood in the rebuilt New Haven spaceport. Around her, human engineers worked alongside Verdanian civilians to construct new buildings using technology that seemed like magic. The planet that had been under siege was now a thriving refuge world where species from across the galaxy came for safety and healing. She watched a group of human children playing with young Verdanians, their laughter echoing across the construction site. The galaxy had accepted that some places couldn't be saved, that some people had to be sacrificed for the greater good. Humans, it seemed, had never accepted that equation. And now the galaxy was learning what that really meant.